Food cost. Do I really need to say more? If you're a restaurant owner and you want to be able to really take control of your food costs, you need to understand how important your point of sale system is to that journey. Hey there, Restaurant Pro. This is Dave Scott Peters, restaurant expert, coach, and creator of the Restaurant Prosperity Formula. And today I'm going to talk about mastering your food cost, the quick start guide to setting up your POS system for success. Before I get into, well, the what part of this video, I'd be remiss if I didn't start with the why. Let's start with the basics. Where should your food cost be? Now, let's be clear. It is not based off of a national average. Like if you see other experts speak on YouTube or at shows or seminars, or they write articles and so on, and they quote the National Restaurant Association, you might hear that your food cost is supposed to be 34%, that the average restaurant, full service restaurants, 34%. Are you average? Is your restaurant on the same street corner, same state, right? City, same street corner, has the same quality product, same price point, same style of service, same set of core values as you? No, they've got pizzerias in with steakhouses, right? So we start looking at that, we go, well, there's going to be a wide range when it comes to those costs, but the average is 34%. Well, that's not the way you've got to do it. You've got to understand another concept called prime cost. Make sure you search my channel, David Scott Peters here on YouTube, and find, I've got a bunch of videos on prime cost if you want to learn the ins and outs of it. But it's basically, prime cost is controllable expenses, in control of management, how we hire, fire, schedule our people, purchase product, utilize that product. In other words, labor cost and cost of goods sold. Well, you're going to find that I'm going to preach that if you do $850,000 a year or more in sales, your prime cost target's not the old number of 65%, but 55%. Well, how do you get there? Well, you could run a 25% cost of goods sold. Well, then what would you have? You'd have 30% for labor. You could run a 30% cost of goods sold and a 25% labor cost, or any variation of that depending on where you are, right? What's your minimum wage? What style of service? What kind of product, quality, so on and so forth, price point, your core values. So a lot more goes into where your food cost should be. Now, how do you know where your food cost should be based on the current menu you have if it's not supposed to be 34%? Well, you need to learn how to calculate your ideal food cost. And that requires accurate, up-to-date recipe costing cards and your point of sale system. Your product mix report, P mix report, velocity report, item by item sales mix report, depending on the POS, what they call it, every item that you sell to your guests, how many they purchased of each one of those things. Then we can gather the cost of that recipe, what you sell it for, and how many guests actually purchased it, and we can come up with what your ideal food cost should be. No waste, no theft, no spoilage, perfect restaurant, which does not exist. We're not robots. And I will tell you that a typical restaurant, if your ideal food cost came out at 30%, an ideal food cost of 30%, a typical restaurant runs 7 to 9 points above ideal. They'd run a 37 to 39% food cost. That's theft, waste, spoilage, mismanagement of the kitchen. Now, a rock star kitchen manager or chef will never hit your ideal food cost. Never. We're not robots. But a rock star would be 1.5, 2 points above ideal. So when I'm putting systems in place, if I can get the 3 or 4 points above ideal and keep working down to that 2 points, I'm in good shape. So the only way to know what your ideal food cost in your restaurant should be is with accurate, up-to-date recipe costing cards and your point of sales system's P-mix report. Does that make sense? It's basically called a weighted average. It allows you to sell anchor appetizers out of a box into a fryer at 38% food cost because you sell the living heck out of these hand-cut, fresh-cut French fries at a 5% cost of goods sold. So if I sell more of the 5%, it lowers my food cost. Make sense? Hope so. If not, again, you can search my YouTube channel and watch videos on calculating your ideal food cost. Now let's talk about, well, the challenge of getting your ideal food cost using that point of sale system. Sometimes it's not just as easy as running that report and typing in to a spreadsheet I call Menu Profitability Monitor to give you that data. it's a little more of a challenge. Why? Because there's these two biggies, two big problems, challenges, if you will, that prevent you from getting a good number. Well, and what are those? Side dishes and modifiers. Side dishes and modifiers. Why are they such a challenge? Well, I'm going to tell you why. All too often, we program our point of sale systems for speed. So what it means is we don't want to put on the effort to put in a lot of data. We want to kind of simplify things and say, if I've got burgers or I've got pizzas or I've got, different items that I can have, I'm going to create what I call universal modifiers if I'm going to take the shortcut. That means, let's say I have a breakfast item and I've got a choice of bread. I've got white bread, wheat bread, rye bread, sourdough bread. Well, I would create these modifiers, a bucket of modifiers, and I'd call it to any breakfast item that had a choice of bread, calling it to the same thing. So if I sold 100 of four different dishes, 100, I'd have 400. Well, I'd also have 400 choices of bread. Well, the fact of the matter is they'd all go into this one modifier and I'd have how many selections of each of those breads that were made, but I have no idea what belonged to each one of those items to find out what that food cost should have been. I know what the basic recipe is, but I don't know if they picked the more expensive bread. Same thing could be true for, well, let me give you a couple more examples. Let's talk about a barbecue restaurant that may have 8 homemade side dishes that are to die for, from mac and cheese to baked beans to cornbread, you name it. Well, they'd have this choice of 2 sides. Now, here we are in my sandwiches section. I can have a brisket sandwich. I could have a pulled pork sandwich. I could have a shredded chicken sandwich. I could have, you burn end sandwich. I could have all these different sandwiches, and they come with a choice of 2 sides. Well, how the heck do I know what my ideal food cost should be if they have a choice of 2 of those and there's 8 different things? Now, I can tell you this, side dishes. In the old days, before there was software, what we used to do is pick our most expensive side, and what you're doing is really padding your ideal food cost, and you're not going to be able to know whether you use product properly. So all of a sudden, I've got these modifiers that are, again, going those 4 different dishes, and they come up and they total up, and I sold 300 of these and 200 of these, but I have no idea which sandwich they went to. How about pizza? Pizza's a tough one. I will tell you, if you set up in your software, recipe costing software, pizza properly, it can be a challenge if you are not, say, an artisan pizza place with one wood-fired size pizza. You got small, medium, large. Hell, somebody may have an extra large or even bigger. Well, you got 1 topping pizzas, you got 2 topping pizzas, 3 topping pizzas. These are the pizzas that I build your own. Well, if I just have pepperoni, sausage, peppers, pineapple, you name it, and they're universal modifiers for each one, I'm not going to really know how much product I really have used, because I may only use 4 ounces on a small of single topping called pepperoni. I might use 6 ounces on the medium. I might use 8 ounces on the large because I want to cover the damn thing. Doesn't matter the number, but the fact of the matter is you see that I use more product the larger the pizza gets. Well, if all of them just say pizza, I don't know that of these pizza toppings, again, in this case, pepperoni, that if I had 1,500 pizzas and 500 were medium and 500 were large and 500 were extra large, doesn't matter what it is, I don't know how many ounces I should have used and what the real cost was generated by using those modifiers. How about omelets? Again, that breakfast thing. Well, maybe an omelet is made to order. Same thing. Maybe there's a build your own and there's 1, 2, 3, 4 ingredients. You charge differently. And the more ingredients you add, the less you may put in of each ingredient so that you don't overload the damn omelet. So all of a sudden it gets really confusing when you use these universal modifiers and you don't know what the recipe it belongs to. So what should you do to fix these issues? Well, I'm going to tell you. Individual modifier lists for each individual item. Instead of one modifier list to choose from that's used on, let's say, each burger has its own list of modifiers. Whether it's side dishes or toppings, does not matter. You might have multiple lists, right? The topping list and the side dish list. This will ensure that you can grab your menu mix and appropriately calculate your ideal food costs, because I will know how many of each of those things we sell. Now, what do you do with this information? How will you be able to make sure you've got it right? Well, you're going to create what's called a batch recipe. Now, a batch recipe is for soups, side dishes, sauces, any ingredient that you make yourself from components of dishes like diced onions and peppers, to what we're doing here, and that is trying to create our ideal food cost or ideal side dish cost, our ideal choice of bread cost, our ideal topping cost for a 1 topping, 2 topping, 3 topping pizza. Batch recipes give you the flexibility to really hone in. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a bit of an example here. This is an example of a recipe costing card for a batch recipe. Again, a batch recipe can be a component to a dish, to a dessert, to a dressing, to a soup, to whatever. But in this case, we're using it to find out, with the product mix from our POS system, what our ideal or average, weighted average side is for a barbecue sandwich that has a choice of 2 sides. Well, if you notice here in the example, here's my choice of 2 sides listed in the recipe name. And down here on row 5, column B, we had 2,392 customers choose 2 sides. So it would be that number times 2 is how many product, right? Each side dish went out. Well, what you're going to notice here in column A, I've got my baked beans from a batch recipe I make myself, potato salad from a batch recipe I make myself, coleslaw from a batch recipe I make myself, and mashed potatoes from a batch recipe I make myself. And in column C, what I've done is I have, from that batch recipe, have a portion cost. So it is literally, by the time I get done with the batch recipe, at the bottom, I have a portion cost, whether it's 5 ounces, 6 ounces, whatever it may be. And in column D, I have the actual cost of that recipe portion. Now, what I do is go to my point of sale system, and those individual modifier lists for each one of the items, I'm going to type in how many I sold. In this case, 1,520 baked beans, 272 potato salad, 1,792 coleslaw, 1,200 mashed potatoes. And if I add that up, I come down here to the quarter, click on it, 4,784. It's off camera. You can't see it, but it is this number, 2392 times 2. So what it does is it calculates 1,520 portions at 27.990 cents. That means $425 worth of product was used when it comes to baked beans, $62 in potato salad, $612 in coleslaw, $260 in mashed potatoes. And when I add those up here in cell E25, we used $1,360 in product. Well, if I take that number, right, and I divide it by 2,392 choices of sides, which is 2 sides each, I can come down here, and in cell E27, I know that my choice of side is 56.875 cents. I know exactly what the weighted average, not using my most expensive side, which would be 34 cents, if you will, times 2, which would be 68 cents. No, I'd be padding my recipe. That's what most people would have done in the past without software. But instead, I can plug it in, and I can know that it's 56, call it 57 cents, choice of 2 sides, and I can put that in the recipe costing card for whatever sandwich this is for. Now, my recipe costing card is exact. And when I use software and I take a picture of the invoice, I send it up to the cloud, and it updates the batch recipe card. It automatically updates the cost. It automatically ties to my what? To my recipe costing card, and now to my product mix. And now I know my ideal food cost based on a weighted average, a good number, one that I can hang my name to and know that I've got the right data. By taking the time to program your point of sale system correctly, you'll be able to know your ideal food cost, re-engineer your menu with that data so you can hit your target food cost from your budget. And when using food and beverage software like Margin Edge, where most of my members go, and I love them to death, no affiliation with them, no kickback, no nothing. You should look them up by going to marginedge.com/DSP so you get my guy, who is a restaurant pro, takes care of my members, to give you a demo. You'll be able to run a report to compare your ideal product usage versus your actual product usage. That means ideally you should have used, based on your menu mix, your ideal food cost, you should have used 350 pounds of chicken based on what your customers actually purchased, but you actually used 400 pounds. Now you can highlight it and fix the exact problem that's running your food cost up, and you can start hitting your food cost budget. Be sure to join me live every Friday at 8 a.m. Pacific time on YouTube, travel schedule permitting, where I'll get you pumped about the upcoming weekend, get you excited about crushing your goals and finding the motivation to be best you possible. Plus, I'll answer your burning questions live.